Alright everybody, welcome back to the Driveway Engineer. I'm JR, and this is Marv. And Marv is like George Washington's hatchet, where I've replaced every part of it, and now, is it really Marv? I say it is. Anyway, Marv is a 1997 F-250 Super Cab 4-wheel drive Power Stroke truck, originally. This is a 2008 Super Duty chassis. That's an F-150 cab from Oklahoma, and that is the original door off Marv. But today's video is about Super Duty axles and how I'm just going to chassis swap the whole thing. And this was my wife's idea, actually. So, you probably know if you're watching the video, Super Duty axles go into an OBS Ford fairly easily. You can buy all the brackets or you can use all the stock stuff. You can use everything off this chassis on an OBS chassis, including the spring buckets, even though they're half an inch narrower. So that's where I was at, is I had a Super Duty axle in the front, and I was looking for one for the rear. I came across this whole chassis for, I think, $500, maybe 400. I don't really remember. I wanted dually axles. I wanted to have a dually. And when we went to pick it up, I was like, yeah, I'm going to take all the stuff off of Marv tomorrow. And my wife was like, why don't you just put the cab on the new chassis? And I was like, well, because the internet said I can't. And then I got to thinking about it, and I got to measuring, and I looked around, and I found a few people have. And so when I had both here, I measured on the front mounts, and they're, like, with a tape measure, they're the same 47-ish inches apart. I can tell that the rears are wildly different, but the fronts are very much the same. So I'm pretty sure that that will set my distance. I don't know that the distance from there to the core support is the same. This is an F-150 core support that came from Florida, and I just set it up there and it matches these mounts. So the rears are wildly different, and I'm not sure what I'm going to have to do with that yet. But anyway, the idea is I'm going to throw a little paint on here. I always use Rust-Oleum. I always brush it on, which is just straight from the can. Heavy metal rust, and then whatever top coat, semi-gloss black is typically what I go with, because I'm not going to be able to get to the top of this. I'm going to have to put the cab on and off like 5 or 6 times though. So, but anyway, so people struggle with an OBS with the trap bar. Like, benefits of doing this, I guess, you wind up swapping the Super Duty gearbox on. I already have it. The brake lines, you got to figure them out and use Super Duty ones and swap them left to right. Well, I already have them. The trap bar, I already have it. How are you going to do the sway bar? Well, I already have it. I guess when you're starting from nothing as I am, I guess if you had a nice OBS, which I did not, you might not want to mess with this, but I didn't have a nice OBS, so rather than drilling all them rivets out and getting the better springs out and blah, 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 it's easier just to build rear cab mounts in this case. And we're not talking about like putting that Yukon on here, which would be a whole nother bigger deal. Like, this is pretty straightforward. I know it irritates me. One of my pet peeves is when people say just slap a Hellcat in your EcoDiesel or whatever, having no idea what that entails. But this seems pretty straightforward, so I got to move some garbage around, and I will drag this chassis back so it's almost in line, get my tractor around, hopefully pick it up without damaging the cab, and at least set it on there, and we can see what it takes to build them out. Alright, so I said I was going to throw the cab on real quick, but it was actually 4 hours of me struggling with the tractor and my gantry and everything else. But now that I have this more or less in position, you can see that we're about 3 or 4 inches off the mount. And you can see the tires 3 or 4 inches back or forward. Those mounts, I'm pretty sure, line up. These mounts do not. The original mount is here where my hand is, and they're way outboard here. So it should be as simple as putting a plate in there and dropping my bushing on. I forgot to mention, from what a couple of guys told me that have done this, the bed mounts are completely different. But I'm going to use a service bed or a flat bed or something to that effect anyway. But yeah, so again, this chassis frame, whatever you want to call it, is the same configuration as what I have now. This was a extended cab F350 service truck, or super cab, and this is a super cab OBS, so I'm pretty sure you have to stay within the same chassis, right? If you have a crew cab, use a crew cab. If you have a regular cab, use a regular cab. Super cab, Super Duties seem to be less common. A lot more people went four-door at that time, but yeah, I'm excited here. This is pretty cool. So I'm going to bring you guys back next week when I work on this. I'm going to go home and take a break and rest up a little bit, but I gotta help my wife with some chores. But yeah, very cool, very cool. I'm pretty sure, like I said, there's the Super Duty mounts on that side kind of holding it up, and on this side there's nothing. I'll have to pick this cab up a few more times, but that's okay. Like, that's kind of the name of the game, and we'll get it done. So I'll bring you guys back, show you what the mounts look like. Alright, so next weekend, did a little yard maintenance, a little shop cleaning. Not as much as some of you commenters would like, but some. My main priority right now is to get this mounted to this chassis, this cab mounted to this chassis, and that will tell me exactly where I need to put my core support. It'll tell me how my transmission's going to line up under there with my shifter. It'll tell me how I need to build my motor mounts, if I can run a mechanical fan, etc., etc. So right now I have this side on a new polyurethane mount. This side's sitting on the Super Duty mount. I need to swap that out. That side actually happens to be lined up, so I'm going to drop a bolt through it here in a minute. And in the rear, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. The Super Duty mount, I started to cut this off, and that may be a mistake. We'll see. Super Duty mount interferes with this floor brace, seems to. I saw a guy, Chris Apple, who built like a little L. So the OBS mount is right here, right there where I'm tapping with my middle finger. So he made it come out and over and bolted his cab to that, and then bolted the piece of steel to the Super Duty mount, which may be an option. I'm not really sure. It seems like it lines right up with the frame, actually, because I saw somebody else say that they used the OBS cross member and like de-riveted this one and riveted a new one in. I don't know, we'll see. I need to get the front ones in first. And the point of that, to get to the point here, is that once I do that, I can come in here, clean this crap out. There's a little bit of rust here in the sill, not anything major. Just clean this stuff up, and I want to paint this cab, sound in this firewall, and get my dash, my brake booster, and my steering column in, so that I have a truck that like rolls and steers and stops, and it's much easier for me to move around. At that point, I can move back to my other projects that this kind of took precedence over. Just looking at my brake lines here, it looks like they were cut coming out of the booster. I think I'm going to use a Super Duty booster. We'll see. we'll see. First, though, the key to the whole thing, though, is to get the thing mounted up. And these front mounts line up, if you're wondering. So I'll bring you guys back. All right. So I drove the stock bushings, Super Duty bushings, out with my air hammer. They're actually not in terrible shape, but I don't want to screw with them. I don't have the bolts for them. I'm not even sure exactly how they worked. It seems like there's no nut on the bottom side. You just bolt from the top side and it draws this up into this, which I think is probably correct. But anyway, I got my eBay polyurethane bushings in there. It is like 48 and a half inches ish, maybe 48, I don't know, from outside of the mount to the outside of the mount. So that piece of 1/4 inch strap is 10 feet long. I'm going to cut it in two. I'm going to weld it together, and then I drop the bolts through from the inside. I'll just make a little outrigger and set it on there. I have it up on this board right now. I do need to trim this little brace, at least on this side. It seems like on that side it's not much of a problem, but I'll probably trim it on both sides. It's not sitting on this chain right now. But yeah, hopefully a 1/2 inch of steel. It's going to want to leverage down. It's going to want to pry up on those bolts. So I'm not going to use the shitty bolts that came with it. I'll go get some grade 8 from Tractor Supply, and I might get a piece of polyurethane or UMHHW, whatever, you know what I mean, and cut it and jam it up underneath the actual original mount, between the mount and the frame. We'll see. We'll see how I feel. So anyway, I'm gonna get to work on that, and I'll bring you guys back in a little bit. All right, so I knocked that axle over and I blew my glow meter apart but on my welder, but the cab is mounted and it is tight here. I had to go in with a body with an air hammer and clearance that out, but I did get it clearanced. And so this little runner runs forward to the cab mount, the factory cab mount, has a 1/2 inch grade 8 bolt drop through it, and then the plan is to come in here and weld it and cut this little nub off. And then this is just the OBS body mount bolt hanging out here. So the front mounts are in, which is just the factory replacement factory mounts. There's my new bolt. So these are 47 inches apart. It's 48, maybe it's 46. This piece of steel is 48 inches overall. These two runners were 5 inches, but obviously they can be 4. There you go. OBS cab on a Super Duty frame. Pretty straightforward. The other thing that'll have to be changed in the future, I haven't gotten to it yet, but you can see that the sway bar mounts are hard into my core support here. This is an 06 frame. The 07 or 08 to 10 are different apparently, and people were saying they had to notch their frames, but this is a 7.3 cross member and it drops right in here, no problems. So, but once that's done, I'll be able to move on. It's windy out here. I'll try to get out in the wind for you. Yeah, so next weekend I'm going to go in there, I'm going to clean that up. I'm going to paint everything, get some sound netting in it. Got to work on the brakes, Hydro Boost. I'm going to drill the Super Duty booster to fit the OBS firewall, and then get the clutch mounted, pedals mounted, dash in there. That'll all be next week and the week after though. For now, I am done, And I hope this helps if you've ever wondered how to put a OBS cab on your Super Duty chassis. If you get a whole rolling chassis to do the axle swap and it matches the configuration, it's probably the way to go. I mean, this, like I mentioned before, I'll mention again, this is a Super Cab cabin chassis, Super Duty chassis. So I have a Super cab. That's what I have. I wouldn't mess with like trying to shorten or lengthen one. You know, if this was a regular cab frame, I wouldn't be doing this. This is a crew cab frame. I might have punted the whole thing and got a crew cab, but since it all works out, that's the way I'm doing it. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on The Driveway Engineer.